Well, I may accidentally out some people.
You have to do a bunch of pixelating. Half these people.
It feels so 80s or early 90s to be political. Where are my friends?
Oh, I like games. I've liked games for a long time. I think it's interesting because in some ways it's that word has become associated with video games because video games are a sort of popular version of entertainment that is games. But before video games were nearly as popular, back in like the 90s and the 80s, frankly, I've been playing role-playing games for a long time. I played weird, nerdy board games back in the past before computer games were quite such a big deal. So, a lot of war games came out of World War II, where you had all these people who had played war games, and they were like, well, as part of training for World War II. And so there were all of these strange games that came out of having a population of people who had been trained for the war and then became civilians, and then they were like, but I like games. And so they started making games, whether it was like, let's relive the Battle of Waterloo, or in particular, my favorite when I was a kid was a Star Trek game called Starfleet Battles that was the Navy's war game system translated into Star Trek because it was an admiral who liked war games, and he was a nerd who liked Star Trek, and so he's like, I'm going to make a game! And it was written like the tax code, you know what I mean? Like, refer to rule G36.221, because it was based on military stuff, right? Like, it's a bureaucracy, like... but no, I'm wandering. But eventually, like, I like games, and so I identify as a gamer. Oh, there's very much a community, and I certainly, like, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer and to identify myself as a community, but I would certainly call myself a nerd. And nerds are a community. Nerds are not necessarily that welcoming, or at least there's a certain amount of, like, nerds filter, like a lot of things. Like, a lot of communities will filter, nerds will have their sort of ways that they try and isolate themselves, because that's what a community is, right? It's us and not them. And so identifying who they are is what makes us, us. I think nerds are intellectual before they value a certain kind of intellectual prowess before they value other kinds of prowess, whether it be physical prowess or social prowess. Like, nerds are bad with people, right? Like, that's a nerd trope. Some of that's because I think some of the fantasy elements of gaming and nerddom were a retreat for people who didn't succeed in other places. I think that I don't want to. It wasn't a very leading question, but I definitely think that being a nerd and being a gamer had a lot to do with being male. In part because I think games are about agency. So if I have a fantastical thing where I have some control over it, that's an alternative to the real world, where the real world I don't have that control. And so whether it's video games or role-playing games or other kinds of games, like, those are essentially sort of stripped down models of the real world where the parameters are more clear, so I can treat it like I understand it. So, men have agency, women aren't supposed to have agency. I think that a lot of heterosexual men who are gamers are not particularly imaginative about gender, and so women are for right? And so treating them like people first and then is not in their vocabulary. And I hadn't thought about it like this, but I read someone's article someplace, and it was anecdote after anecdote of women talking about when they did role playing and they were subjected to some sort of fantastical sexual assault in their role playing. And I like role playing games, and there's no fucking in my role playing games because it's really like it's just not something I'm comfortable with in a group setting. But apparently, some people are like, "Oh, are we playing a role playing game? Well, then I guess you're tied up." Like that's so that's not welcoming, right? And that's also filtering. That's a like, who's us? It's us. It's not them. I don't want to have to think about certain things, so I'm not going to let those people be in my group.
You know,
I definitely think being in a larger community like Portland means that because Eugene is in its own way liberal, but doesn't make it progressive. If that makes sense. And like having more people means that I have more people to choose from, and I'm able to sort of self-select with people that I like that are going to have ideas like mine. It's just a larger community makes that possible. I definitely think that one of the reasons I decided I wanted to be a feminist, or that I'm interested in having conversations about all of this sort of thing, whether it's feminism or intersectionality, or is because I want to have more friends. Like, that's the benefit to me, is that there are all of these arbitrary rules about who gets to spend time with whom, and if I'm critical about them, then that means I can have more of a community, right? And it's difficult where there's a person who might join the Exalted game, and he's roommates with a coworker of mine who I like, and who's nerdy, and who's not stupid, but who also unironically wears a fedora, and try to explain to me how the main character in Ghost in the Shell might have been a white person, and like showed me pictures from the Ghost in the Shell anime. I was like, doesn't that look white? And I'm like, oh. So it's funny that like I can want to have a broader community, but that also means that there's lots of nerds that I just can't tolerate. Like there's a certain kind of nerdy attitude that, or like I feel like there are a lot of nerdy men who aren't very, they're imaginative about elves and dwarves and space and lightsabers or whatever, but then when you talk to them about race or gender, they're like, no, it's like this. That's not... Like, there's certain kinds of tactics that I think you probably get with nerds, but I don't necessarily think that patriarchy is different. Like, it's all flavors of the same shit, right? Like, it's all, that's another thing, is that if you're a nerdy white dude, you know what it's like to have people be shitty to you about what you care about or what you look like or what you want. And so to turn around and sort of be broy at outsiders seems disappointing.
From Guardian Games to from the gamer event with my buddy Riddle, and it was super fun. The front room had a bunch of board games and that kind of thing, and then the back room was where the actual gamer event was. Unfortunately, the actual event itself was in the bar, and wah wah. But we did stay and hang out. We joined a group who was playing Trains, which is a really fun, weird board game about trains. But it was super fun. It was, a little weird just because it's like a bunch of people that you don't know and hanging out. But it was really fun. The only weird thing was, we got in and we were standing there for a little bit, and the guys who addressed us, the employees, didn't even acknowledge me, like didn't say hi or didn't address me or anything. They only addressed Riddle, but I don't know if that was just because they addressed him first or if it was they were being discriminatory. I don't think so. I think they just addressed him first. It didn't come off as being weird. And the actual people of the event were really, really nice. Pretty mixed group of people, men and women of huge variety of ages and people. It was packed. I mean, there were like the first clip, the first pan is of all the people, and I mean, I think there were 50 plus people there. It was crazy. It was super busy, and I had never been. So it was really fun. I'm really glad I went. I feel like I know a little bit more about the Portland gaming scene and, you know, beyond the sort of socially uncomfortable part of it, it was super, super fun. And everyone was really nice and really welcoming and really open, and we just hung out and played trains. So it was a good time. I'm glad I went.
Gamer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A gamer is just someone who games are more than just something that's a distraction for them. It's kind of a part, almost I want to say, of their identity, where they can relate to others and sort of build bridges with each other based around games. Like I've made a lot of friends just from people recognizing I have a few little gamer tags on my keychain, I have a game-related phone case, and people will notice that and come up to me and talk to me. And that's how I've actually made a lot of connections in my life, and I feel like that's what I would consider a gamer. Oh, absolutely. Just in my personal experience, just because I guess I can't speak for everyone because I haven't encountered any sort of resistance, but it seems really welcome and opening to everyone who wants to join it. Yeah, and that certainly depends on which part of the gaming community you're talking about, because I've noticed like the RPG and the JRPG community has a lot of heavy saturation with, I guess, non-traditional gamers, in that, and just that, so a lot of the more traditional games like first-person shooters and general RPGs for multiplayers, that tends to have a lot more, want to say, I guess, a younger crowd, a more aggressive crowd, a more insulting crowd, to be honest, because I've had a lot of insults hurled my way in online games involving shooting. A lot of very personal insults and weird insults, but whenever I get involved with the community involving RPGs, role-playing games, especially Japanese role-playing games, it seems that the community is a lot more welcoming, a lot more accepting, and it's also made up of a lot more, I guess, diverse people, because most of my friends who play JRPGs are from minority groups for some strange reason, in one way or the other, the sexual orientation, race, gender, etc.
Right. How do you... gaming?
It's just kind of, it almost goes hand in hand for some reason, and I guess that just might be my personal involvement in it, and that I seem drawn to other gamers, and that a lot of my gay friends happen to also be gamers, and it really is just a way for us to connect further and join in with the queer community, because there are gamer sort of events where they host a game night specifically for queer identified individuals, and it's a great way to come together and connect, and it sort of brings together an often isolated feeling queer community.
Alright, I just came back from Red Castle Games, doing a Magic the Gathering event thing. This time I went by myself, which was new and sort of intimidating, to say the least. But the people that were the employees were super nice, and this has so nothing to do with Guardian Games as an entity or as a business, and I mean no disrespect to them, they were very kind. But I went in and I paid the cover charge, it was like $5, and I got in, and I don't play Magic, and I kind of almost think of it being a separate entity from video game nerds or RPG nerds or online nerds. They kind of have their own community and thing, and so, but I thought it was important to include, and we do have a pretty pervasive Magic the Gathering community in Portland, so I thought it'd be important to include. But it was super weird. I got in, and I have a really light deck. I borrowed a deck from my brother, even. And, like, I got in, and you go in, and you sort of wait your turn, and you join a table, essentially. And I got there, and, like, it was all men, or male presenting. There were no other women except for me. And it was just super weird. Like, they were really pretentious and pompous about the rules, and then on top of that were really mansplainy about the whole situation. And one guy even picked up my deck and started flipping through it, and like without asking, and like criticizing the deck and criticizing my playing, and I don't know, just really uncomfortable. I left sort of early. The event itself lasts like 6 hours or something, and I left at like 1 or 2. It was just, I don't know. I didn't have the same feeling as Guardian Games at all. And again, I don't think it was the place. I just think it was the group of people in the event, which makes me feel kind of like maybe part of the welcoming nature of the Guardian Games event was that it was a queer event in particular, which I think made it a little more welcoming and a little more comfortable for me. Whereas this was pretty much what seemed like heterosexual dudes playing a game.
Well, I kind of feel like I more consider myself to be like just a gamer. I don't know if I would really consider myself to be part of the community, just because I don't interact a lot with gamers outside of my own group. I don't really go to the events that are around Portland. I'm part of a D&D group that for the most part is composed of women. We do have one guy that's part of the group, but I was originally part of a different group that I was in for a couple years, and it just got to this really weird point where this new guy joined, and he was like kind of trying to make, like, I don't really know how to, like, he was trying to make passes at me in character, and that was like super weird and irritating. And the other people in the group didn't really feel like it was that big of a deal, except for me and this one other girl who was also really irritated by it. So we ended up leaving and making our own group like 6 months ago. And now we've just kind of like been doing that together, and we found a couple friends that just also happen to be women that have had similar experiences that have wanted to game with us. I mean, I guess like no, because I left. But I mean, it's weird because in some ways, yeah, but I don't really feel like it's welcoming in a way that's like, hey, we want to play with you. It's welcoming in like a, we want to hang out with you because we want a woman in our group to talk to and be like weird with. So.
But do you feel like, considering the fact that you're in a game that now seems to be fairly welcoming and composed of people that you like, do you feel as though there are other sides of gaming that are welcoming, that it can be?
I mean, I do feel like it can be welcoming, but I kind of feel like you have to search out your own group, and I don't know if I would consider that part of the larger gaming community.
So then, if it's not welcoming, why do you continue to do it? What's the value in it?
I mean, when you find the right people to do it with, it's really enjoyable, and it allows for a lot of creativity that I kind of feel like the like monotony of everyday like adult life doesn't really allow for. So in that sense, it's important to me. It's a good thing to like kind of get me out of my regular routine every week and go and meet up with some friends. When I was doing it with the other group, it just became like a chore almost. So at that point, like it had no worth to me, which is why I left. I mean, I don't really feel like actually being LGBT affiliated comes up very often in the gaming community, in terms of like actually being gay. People do have the tendency when like doing like online games, people do have the tendency to use like slurs, and sort of buy into this idea of like masculine culture, and that like if you are weak then you're a woman, if you're weak then you're gay, like that sort of thing. So there's lots of just like very like gendered or just like really like homophobic terms used, like fag gets used a lot. And that's like super frustrating. People for the most part tend to just kind of ignore it. It's just like part of gaming culture, so it's not a big deal, whatever. I don't personally feel that way. I get really frustrated when I hear that type of language. It makes other people who wouldn't necessarily use that type of language in the real world start to think it's okay. And it just, I feel like, perpetuates this idea that is really just really unnecessary. Like, if you want to trash someone while you're shooting at their character, there's a lot of other things that you can say other than you're a fag. Like, not really relevant, not really important. So I have the tendency not to play the games that like have the verbal, I'm not even sure what to call them. What are they? The shooter games?
Verbal talkie games.
The verbal talkie games, I don't play them because they piss me off.
Yes. And I think now more than ever, that's really important. After doing this project, I'm really glad I did it. And I think that after talking to some people and having some of my own experiences at the gamer events and that kind of thing, I think it's really important to be a woman gamer. And I think that it's a good representation. I think it's good to kind of show that there are some of us out there. And I think gaming is really important. I think liking games is important, and liking yourself is important. And, you know, games have taught me a lot about myself, and gaming has taught me a lot about myself. I think this project has really helped me develop as a person and develop as a gamer. I feel like now more than ever, I really appreciate my friends who game and who game with me. You know, it's a intelligent, funny, progressive, sweet group of people that I game with. And I think that this has really shown me not only how bad it can be, but how great I have it, and how awesome it is, and how much I really, really enjoy it. And so, yes, I am absolutely a gamer, and I am proud to be a gamer. I think that welcoming is a strange word to use that I thought had bared more significance than I think it does now. To me, welcoming means, you know, open arms, come in, do a thing. And I've found that it is more exclusive than that, but maybe not because it's intentionally derogatory, but because it's difficult to break into a tight-knit community. Here, and this is Portland specific. So I don't really know if I would say that it's welcoming as much as I think that it's available. I think online gaming is significantly more violent than person-to-person gaming, in the sense that there's more derogatory language and slurs and negative, what I think of as negative perspectives being perpetuated. But I don't, you know, one of the saving graces of being online is that if you don't like it, you can leave. But if you're in an unsafe position anywhere in real life, there's the very real concern that someone might follow you to your car, or be weird with you, or be violent. So that's sort of harrowing. I think on a feminist perspective, the amount of sort of men's club is really discomforting, but that I do think it's available, and women and people in the community and in the industry who are doing their very best to increase the representations of women that are non-sexualized, and to have powerful female characters that are representatives of women in gaming, because as we as we can see, there are negative happenings. I mean, Gamergate is a great example. So I look forward to seeing the community jump forth in its ability to be progressive and opening. So when I first started this project, I had a question that was sort of a two-part question. How are the male-dominated aspects of gaming culture pervasive in Portland? And how does that affect me? Or does it affect me? And unfortunately, location and time were limiting factors, so I don't feel like I have a great "this is how it is" answer. But after doing this project, I'm so proud to be a Portlander and so proud to be a gamer, and I'm excited. I think that if there are even a handful of events that are welcoming and fun and progressive, and even a handful of people that are welcoming and liberal and all of that, that there's hope for the gaming community, that it doesn't just have to be a staunch, male-dominated nerd club. I think it could be for everybody. I think it's a great thing, and I think Portland is a great place to represent that. Even though it has its own problems, I think they're lesser here than elsewhere, based off of everyone's interviews and the way that I was treated at events. Although I would like to explore that further and for a longer amount of time in other places. And, it's difficult because I grew up here, and it's not like I can compare, like, oh, Las Vegas is really progressive compared to Portland, or Portland's really progressive compared to Seattle. I don't really know. I just have the one city to kind of base it all off of, but based off of what I saw in Portland and based on how I was treated, I think that we have a really great community here. And I think that for the most part, you, like anything, you have to be wary of who you spend your time with and how you want your time spent, but I think for the most part, it's accessible and fun. Accessible and fun. And I had a really good time with the project. I feel like I've learned so much about the gaming community, and I've learned how important it is for me to identify as a gamer and to continue that aspect of my identity and to be as active in it as ever and be an advocate for women in gaming. I feel like before I sort of saw it as an opportunity to investigate, and now I see it as an opportunity to advocate. And I'm so proud to be a gamer, and I'm so proud to be a Portlander, and I'm proud to be a PSU student. So I'm glad I was able to get this project underway. Thank you.
My character would start talking about it a little bit, just very beginning, and then oh, do you have this but in a different size?
Ooh,
oh, hey, do you have this but I want more of a greenish flower. It's gonna go with my eyes. Do you have green anywhere? Can you check the back? The back of the bag, maybe grab some other, ask for some different makeup or something that they brought me, but then when they bring it, no, I don't like that, bring it back.
Go ahead and make me a manipulation plus socialize check. You can have 2 days for that.